This video is for entertainment purposes only. Wild mushrooms and plants can be harmful or fatal if swallowed.
Hi friends, today we're going to be ranking the most foolproof, easiest beginner mushrooms in the eastern United States. Mushroom foraging has become increasingly popular in the United States in recent years, which makes sense. Being a nation of immigrants, we haven't had a huge tradition of mushroom foraging. People coming from foreign lands to settle here who gobbled up every mushroom they saw probably didn't last too long. European settlers did find some mushrooms here that they were familiar with. The giant puffball, the chicken of the woods, the morels, and the shaggy mane, for example. And that's exactly what Clyde Christensen put in his book, Common Edible Mushrooms, in 1943 as the original foolproof for mushrooms. It was a very helpful concept, the foolproof for, but we've learned a lot about mushrooms since then. Of course, no mushroom is foolproof. Emperors and kings and mycologists and foraging experts and even rocket scientists have died from eating a mushroom, so you too can make a mistake. Before you begin foraging for wild mushrooms, there's a few things you need to know. One, you need to positively identify all your mushrooms. If you think you've positively identified a mushroom for the first time, wait, don't eat it. Maybe wait till the third time, check your references, learn about the mushroom, take a spore print. Then on that third time, you'll know that you have absolutely and correctly identified the mushroom.
Triple check your identification.
Second, you're always going to want to cook your mushrooms thoroughly. Many mushrooms have volatile organic compounds that can make you sick. Those can be easily cooked out, and some of the most deadly mushrooms have very stable compounds that can't be cooked out. That's why they're poisonous.
Always cook mushrooms thoroughly.
Also, any mushroom could cause a bad reaction in any person. Of these 30 some odd mushrooms that we're going to be ranking, I've had a bad reaction to only one. It's pretty rare, but it can happen, especially with some of the less foolproof ones.
No mushroom is safe.
And also, you always want to ease into a mushroom. If you've positively identified a mushroom, are going to try to eat it, only eat a tablespoon at first. Sit with that for 24 hours, see how it treats you, see if you have a bad reaction. If you do not, then double that amount and so forth until you know that that mushroom agrees with you.
Only eat a small amount at first.
Also, it's probably a good idea to familiarize yourself with all the poisonous mushrooms in your area. That's a good place to start. Learn those most poisonous and deadly mushrooms. That will keep you on a safe keel going forward in your mushroom foraging journey.
Learn about the most poisonous mushrooms in your area.
All right, having said that, let's get into our mushroom tier list ranking. The criteria are going to be that it must be an edible mushroom. It must be found throughout most of the eastern United States, and we're not going to do any cap and stem or true guild type mushrooms, as many of those can be quite dangerous. That's a bit more advanced level. Maybe we'll do that in a future video. Let's start off with the original Foolproof 4. First, we have the giant puffball mushroom. Puffball mushrooms can be extremely dangerous when they're small, as some of the world's most deadly amanita mushrooms will also emerge from a small white ball coming up from the ground, but you can just cut them in half if you see the outline of a little forming cap and stem mushroom inside the white ball. It is not a puffball, it is a amanita mushroom. But there's no real worry with a giant puffball, which is usually from the size of a softball to the size of a volleyball. The only concern with the giant puffball is you want to eat it when the interior flesh is still white. If it has started to turn yellow or gray or green, that will not be a good mushroom to eat. So a couple of things to worry about, but easily overcome. So I'm going to put this in the mostly foolproof top tier. Now let's move on to the chicken of the woods, an easily identified, very common mushroom with its bright orange and yellow colors. It is a delicious edible mushroom with no real dangerous lookalikes, and you do want to collect this when it's young and fresh and juicy. But there are some concerns with this mushroom, as it is known to cause allergic reactions in some people. And because of that, I'm going to have to put this one in the foolproof with caution tier. Now let's do the morels. This is the American yellow morel, the most common and prevalent morel mushroom in the eastern United States. Morels are actually a pretty toxic mushroom, especially if you eat them without cooking them thoroughly. You can definitely get sick, and some people do have allergic reactions to these mushrooms. People have died and gotten really sick from eating morel mushrooms, but all the 12 species of morel mushrooms in the eastern United States can be eaten, but they must be eaten with caution. Therefore, I'm going to put this in the mostly safe with caution category. And the last of the original Foolproof 4 is the Shaggy Mane. This is a mushroom found in urban areas that might be contaminated. It doesn't hold up very well, it deteriorates really fast, and there are some dangerous lookalikes, and also it doesn't meet the criteria of this tier list as it is a cap and stem mushroom with true gills, so we're not even going to do that one. Now let's do the rest of the puffballs. Here we have the pear-shaped puffball. It is a small puffball, but could not be confused with an amanita mushroom as it does not grow from the ground. It grows only on decomposing wood, and therefore it is fairly safe. But the same rules apply as with the giant puffball. If the interior flesh is not white, it is not safe to eat, but that's a fairly safe puffball, so I'm going to put that in the mostly foolproof category. Next we have the brain puffball or skull-shaped puffball. These will have a more wrinkly appearance than the giant puffball, and they'll have more of a muffin or skull shape, and they're usually a little bit smaller, like 3 by 3 to 8 by 8 inches. And this is a good edible, but you do need to remove the skin on this one. Same rules apply as they are not so small, but you do still need to cut them in half and check and look for that outline of a little mushroom. Not quite as safe maybe as the giant puffball or the pear-shaped puffball, but I'm going to give this a top tier rating. Next we have the Purple-Spored Puffball. This is very similar to the brain puffball in shape and size, and also grows up from the ground, but this one has purple flesh in maturity. Same rules apply. You want to eat it only when the interior flesh is white, and you probably want to peel the skin off of this one as well. I'm going to put this one in the top tier also. Our next common puffball mushroom is the common puffball mushroom, or the gem-studded puffball. This is a small terrestrial white puffball mushroom with a little bit of a stem. It can be found in the woods or in the grass, and it is edible, but because it is a small white mushroom that could easily be confused with an amanita, I do not advise eating this one, especially if you are a beginner. It's probably just not worth the risk. Okay, we've done chicken of the woods. Now let's do the rest of the giant polypores that are found throughout the eastern United States. So here we have the white-pored chicken of the woods, very similar to the sulfur shelf or the standard chicken of the woods, but it has a paler color scheme, more of a peach color on top and cream underneath, and these will always be found at the base of trees, and they do taste good, but not quite as good as the regular sulfur shelf, and they do have issues with giving some people bad reactions or allergic reactions, so I'm going to place this in the foolproof with caution category. Next we have the Great Lakes chicken of the woods. This is a chicken of the woods that grows in the northeast and only on conifer wood. It does not meet our criteria as it does have a limited range, but I thought I would include it because this species is known to cause more adverse and allergic reactions than its cousins that grow on deciduous wood, and I'm going to put it in the not advised category for beginning mushroom hunters. Next we have the hen of the woods. This is another giant polypore mushroom that grows at the base of trees, and it does kind of resemble feathers with its brown or gray or tannish colors, and just like all the other giant polypores, it is known to cause adverse reactions in some people, so I'm going to place this in the foolproof with caution category. Next we have another delicious giant polypore mushroom, the black staining polypore or the rooster of the woods, known for its dark staining reaction. When damaged, this is a big cluster of mushroom fronds that grows on the ground, and this is the one mushroom in this list that I personally have had a bad reaction with. I ate just a small amount and I had some GI distress and some throat tightening. So just like the other giant polypores, I'm going to put this in the foolproof with caution category. And our final giant polypore is the Berkeley's polypore. Similar looking to the black staining polypore, but it does not have a black staining reaction. It has rounder, larger fronds, and it is also found on the ground near the base of trees. So this one really just doesn't taste like much of anything, and it also can elicit adverse reactions. So I'm going to put this in the foolproof with caution, less good category. Okay, now let's do the morels, the chanterelles, and craterelles. Let's start with the black morel. This is the only other morel that meets our criteria, covering most of the eastern United States. Just like the yellow morel, it is toxic if undercooked and may not agree with all people. And black morels are known to cause more adverse reactions than yellow morels, so this is definitely going to be placed in the foolproof with caution category. Next we have the smooth Chanterelle, a widely distributed Chanterelle mushroom, bright yellow and grows up from the forest floor. It does have kind of wrinkly folds on its fertile surface, but those are not true gills, those are false gills. And the main concern with this one is that people can confuse it with the jack-o'-lantern mushroom, a highly toxic mushroom that grows on decomposing wood, but it can be buried decomposing wood, and it can be confused for the smooth Chanterelle. It happens every year. Some unscrupulous mushroom hunter sends themselves to the hospital, or their whole family, or a whole dinner party. And to a lesser extent, this one can also be confused with the false Chanterelle mushroom. But based on those factors, I'm going to place this in the foolproof with caution category. Next we have another widely distributed Chanterelle mushroom, the ghost Chanterelle. This one is distinguished by its white fertile surface and stem, a little more easy to discern from the jack-o'-lantern mushroom in my opinion. The best way to tell Chanterelles from jack-o'-lanterns is to cut them in half. A true Chanterelle will be a white color on the interior of its flesh, and a jack-o'-lantern will be more of a yellow color. But for the same reasons as the last one, I'm going to place this in the foolproof with caution category. Next we have the black trumpet mushrooms. These grow from the forest floor. They are dark black and trumpet or vase shaped, and they are quite delicious. They have a similar flavor to a morel mushroom, a nutty, earthy, delicious flavor. They don't have any really dangerous lookalikes. You could confuse them with the devil's urn, but that's just an inedible mushroom. It is not toxic, and they don't have a reputation for causing adverse reactions. So I'm going to put this one in the top tier of mostly foolproof. Now we have the red Chanterelle, a very bright orange to pink, very small Chanterelle mushroom that grows up from the forest floor. In my opinion, these don't taste quite as good as the smooth Chanterelle, and they are very small, and there are some other small orange mushrooms like deceiver type mushrooms that you could confuse these with, and it's even possible you might be able to confuse them with the deadly Growlorina. So for those reasons, I am going to put this in the foolproof with caution but less good category. Next we have the flame trumpet. Looks more like a Chanterelle, but it's actually more closely related to the black trumpet mushrooms. This is a small orangish yellow mushroom with a pink fertile surface, and these could also be confused with a deceiver type mushroom or a false Chanterelle. So I'm going to put them in the foolproof with caution category. Now let's look at some more wood decomposing mushrooms. Okay, here we have the Dryad saddle or pheasant back mushroom. This is a wood decomposer, and it can get pretty big, and it has these kind of matted feather-like appearing scales on the back. It's very distinctive. There aren't really any dangerous lookalikes. You could confuse it with an immature black-footed or blackfoot polypore, but those are more inedible than toxic mushrooms, and they would not have the distinctive scales. So this one is fairly safe, although I don't really enjoy eating it that much. You have to collect them when they're very young and tender. Not my favorite mushroom, so I'm going to put this in the foolproof but less good category. Alright, our next wood decomposing mushroom is the Resinous Polypore or steak of the woods. This is a shelf mushroom you can find in the late fall, and it is a delicious edible mushroom if you catch it when it is young and juicy. It will quickly turn hard and become inedible though. It has a kind of reddish brown velvety top and a cream undersurface, and will often ooze amber liquid. There's really no mistaking this with any other mushroom except for its close relative, the benzoin bracket, that only grows on conifer wood. So as long as you know that you found this mushroom on deciduous wood, it's going to be fine. There is very little evidence of adverse reactions with this mushroom. So based on all that, I'm going to place it in the top tier as a mostly foolproof mushroom. Our next wood decomposing mushroom is one of my favorites, the lion's mane mushroom. It's always a joy to find one of these, as they are a bit more rare than some of these other mushrooms. There's basically no other mushroom that looks like this. It's kind of like a little ball shape with icicles hanging down, as the fertile surface has a delicious flavor, and there are no dangerous lookalikes. So for those reasons, I'm going to place this in the top tier as a mostly foolproof mushroom. Next we have the coral tooth fungus, a close relative to the lion's mane, and it has a similar white color and ball shape, but it is just more branched, more coral-like, I guess you would say, and it is a delicious edible fungus with no real dangerous lookalikes. There are some other coral funguses you could confuse it with, but they don't look very similar, as those will be more upright in nature, and these aren't known to cause adverse reactions generally. So I'm going to place the coral tooth fungus in the top tier as a mostly safe beginner mushroom. Next we have the crown-tipped coral fungus. This is a coral fungus that grows on decomposing wood. It is kind of a pale tannish to whitish color, and its key identifying feature are the little tiny projecting points at the top of its fingers resembling a crown, hence the name crown-tipped coral fungus. This is an edible fungus, but it could be confused with other types of coral fungus, particularly those in the genus Ramaria. Genus Ramaria coral fungus will be growing from the ground. Crown-tipped coral will be growing from decomposing wood. It's not my favorite mushroom. There's not much to it. It doesn't have a great flavor in my opinion, and it has some lookalikes that could make you sick. So I am going to put this in the foolproof, with caution, less good category. Let's take a look at some jelly fungi. Our first jelly fungus is the jelly tree ear. This one is actually fairly substantial, has a good bit of crunch. It's what you can find in your hot and sour soup, and there aren't really any dangerous lookalikes for this mushroom. It will always be growing from decomposing wood. It does have anticoagulant properties. It will thin your blood, so it could be dangerous for someone who's on a blood thinner if they ate a bunch of these, but that's kind of a minor concern. You would have to eat an awful lot of them, and they have no flavor, so these are just added in soups for texture, generally speaking. So yeah, not that useful, not that flavorful. Therefore, I'm going to put this in the mostly foolproof but not so great category. Next we have the snow fungus. This is a white to clearish, very gelatinous, slimy fungus that grows on decomposing wood. It is known for its health benefits, benefiting the skin, and you can buy this commercially cultivated. It's just not very practical to collect from the wild. It doesn't travel well. This one is also flavorless, and it does have some lookalikes like the white jelly fungus, so I don't really recommend this one for foraging purposes. So I am going to put this in the foolproof, with caution, less good category. Now we have witch's butter. This is a bright yellow jelly fungus, gelatinous, found on small sticks, lives most of its life up in the treetops, but sometimes those sticks fall to the ground. It is also flavorless and does not travel well, and there is one lookalike for this mushroom I can think of, the orange jelly fungus that grows on conifer wood. Some people might have more adverse reactions to the orange jelly fungus if they mistook it for witch's butter, but it's fairly safe. It's just not that tasty or that useful, so not so great for foraging. So I'm going to place this one in the mostly foolproof but not that good category. And finally we have the American amber jelly fungus. This is a very common jelly fungus, often found on small oak sticks. This fungus and the witch's butter are some of the only funguses they say you can eat raw. I would still maybe cook them or at least wash them, as they could be infected with bacteria or have the eggs of parasites like tapeworms on them from the feces of mammals. There are some lookalikes for this mushroom, but they are all harmless. The black witch's butter and the warlock's butter, both of which will be more globby and less frondy than the amber jelly fungus. I'm going to place it in the mostly foolproof but less good category. And that does it for our tier list. All right, well, that's it. A bit subjective maybe. A different person might have ranked these mushrooms differently. Most of my favorite edible mushrooms would be on the safe with caution tier or not on this list at all. But we did come up with 8 safe edible top tier mushrooms. I don't know what you would call those, what the moniker would be. The safe edible 8. I don't know. You tell me. Tell me if I missed anything, and tell me if there are any future mushroom tier lists that you would like to see. Hope you enjoyed that. I'm Michael File. I'll see you next time on Mushroom Journeys.